Hi folks, welcome back to Narc Thriver. This is the channel where we go from surviving to thriving. So, if you like my content, like, share, comment, subscribe. So here we are, and I want to talk about the third part of this series, which is when the holodeck fails. Yeah, when the glitches come and the Holosuite fails. So last time I left you, I told you about how I went back. Recap, I went back, there were glitches starting to show. Before I'd gone back, he disappeared for 3 days. The mask was starting to slip and he blamed it on a phone issue. I sent him some money for a phone. He got a phone. Everything was back to normal. Got there, went back the second time, and he, myself, and his 2-year-old son were living together in the apartment 2 weeks. So the first thing that I noticed when I was out there, this is the glitch when I was out there that really started to go downhill from this point onwards. When I sent him a message when he was at work saying, you have my heart, don't break it. Okay, he didn't reply to that message, and I thought, oh, that's odd, because he always replies to my messages, but he's at work. But my intuition already was like, something's not right. Your intuition just tells you before, you don't necessarily know why, but intuition just pinged, something's not right. Anyway, he came back from work, everything seemed fine. He went out, then he came back again with his friend to the apartment, met his best friend, and listening to music, talking, everything seemed okay. And then the friend left, and I noticed this change, this real change in his persona. He seemed like he was seething with rage underneath, a passive rage that's just bubbling underneath. Not outright abusive or anything like that. It's just this passive aggressive rage bubbling underneath the surface. When he spoke to me, I can't even remember what we spoke about, but he was stressed. He just seemed unduly stressed, and I don't even know what he was stressed about, to be honest. And his voice changed. It was a shrill voice that he had, like definitely not his normal voice. Shrill voice. As I said, rage. He seemed very rageful, like he wanted to, I don't know, he wanted to let loose on something or someone. I wasn't scared at all, because I knew I hadn't done anything to him, but it just still seemed a bit strange. Like, why is he like this? And it almost seemed like he'd shrunk in height. His face had contorted. I was looking at him thinking, who am I talking to here? This is not the same person that I came out to be with. It was like I was communing with a completely different person. And I remember my intuition saying to me, this is like really strange. What is going on here? And I spoke to him, and he seemed to be stressed about the business that we started. I remember having a conversation with him. There's so much to do. We didn't know where to start with that. He was worried about all of that, and he just seemed stressed and in a rage, basically, but not in an outright aggressive, violent rage, just bubbling under the surface rage. So we spoke, and I said to him, you know, we can do this over weeks and months. We can break this down to make it seem less intensive. We can have plans and mini plans and targets to get this done. I'm going to be here with you, supporting you, you know, both of us doing this as a team. So you don't have to worry and stress so much about it. I remember giving him a massage as well, because he just seemed, I don't know, even then at that time I thought, it seems demonic. This does not seem normal. It just seemed like he'd had a personality transplant. So he went back to normal afterwards, but that was the first thing that I was thinking, why is he like this? But then, you know, I thought to myself, I know what it's like to be angry and bubbling with rage under the surface and not being able to express it. And, you know, I try to empathize in my head that, you know, his life hasn't been easy and it's overwhelming with work, his son, you know, family responsibilities, all of that. So I sort of excused his change of persona. I wouldn't even call it behavior, persona, because he was like an Arnold Schwarzenegger Total Recall experience. Like, where's Hauser? Who's this? You know? So that was that. That was another experience. Then when we moved to the second apartment, which was just down the road. We went there, and then he brought his mum round with his son. I'm not sure if his mum wanted to see the new apartment, and that was fine. But she seemed a bit distant. I don't know why, but she seemed a bit distant. Anyway, he came back, and he seemed quiet. He seemed really quiet. And then the next day, he was really distant and quiet. You know, it was just the three of us, and he seemed distant. By the way, I had the second interview, and I'd found out that I'd got the remote position. So I was really happy, and I really wanted to tell him, like, wow, this has happened. You know, I felt like it was just God telling me, yeah, this is meant to be. But I wanted to know what was going on with him. It's very quiet. I went out and I went to the beach. We were all meant to go together as a family, but I went by myself. Anyway, he went out. He took his son to his parents' house the next day, and he went out and he didn't come back. He didn't come back to the apartment. And so I was phoning him to find out what's up, because he told me he was going to go and see this friend. Yeah, this best friend. So hadn't heard from him. Phoned him to find out what was going on. Phoned him about three times. And he didn't reply. So I just gave up after that, because I don't care who you are. I'm not ringing down your phone constantly. So I left it. I gave up calling him at about 1 o'clock, between 1 and 2 in the morning. He rocks up to the second apartment that we just moved to the day before, at about 5 o'clock in the morning. And he's, again, this strange persona that he's got. He came with that. He came back to the apartment with that. And I was waiting for him, and I was pissed off at this time, but I didn't want to express that openly. I wanted to stay calm, stay grounded, find out what was going on. because this didn't seem like normal behaviour to me. So he came back. He gave me this story about how the best friend's father is a crack addict, and he's a crack addict on another one of the islands of his country. And then he started asking me, because I was thinking to myself, okay, well, what's that got to do with us? You know, I didn't want to seem nasty, but that was in my head. What's that got to do with us? And how does that explain why you've outright ignored me for the last 5-6 hours? But I stayed grounded and listened. And then he started asking me, well, what would you do if that was me? If I was a crack addict, if I didn't have any money, if I didn't have a job, if I had been abandoned by my family, what would you do? And I was thinking, where is this coming from? But I said to him, well, if it was you, I would try to help you, but ultimately you would have to help yourself. You would have to want the help. If you didn't want to change, then there's nothing that anyone else can do. Not me, not your mother, not your son, not anyone. So change would ultimately need to come from you. I would try to support you, but not at the expense of destroying myself. So he seemed, I don't know, he just seemed really disturbed. There was something about him that just seemed disturbed, angry, agitated. Again, this persona of bubbling under the surface, this shrill voice that, you know, and it's almost like he's hunched and he's shrunk. It's like, I don't know, you know. When I think about it now, it's like demonic possession, to be honest with you. What I was experiencing, what I was seeing was someone else. You know, who I was communing with was not the person that I came to be with. Yeah, it wasn't. It was just a different persona altogether. So, you know, he listened, and then he went into the bedroom. We went into the bedroom, and he was smoking like a chimney on the balcony. And then we went into the bedroom, and he started ironing his work shirt on the bed because he had to go to work in 2 hours. He was talking about our future and plans about what we would be doing business-wise, you know, where we thought it would be good for us to live together and all of that. And in that same sentence, the very same sentence, he says to me, we don't have a future. We don't have a future together. So I was like, what? What do you mean? We don't have a future. Why are you saying this now? Because you have everything and I have nothing. You have your job, you have your house, you have your, you know, you have money, you have established yourself, and I haven't. And I want to build with someone from nothing. So I was like, basically, you want us to end because you think I have everything, and you think that that's the reason why we should not be together. So, you know, he just like really destabilized me with this, because as I said, in the same sentence, he was talking to me about our future, about us being together and everything. And then the same sentence, 2 seconds later, we don't have a future. We can't be together. So I said to him, well, we could build from scratch. Why couldn't we build from scratch together? You know, I'm coming here and plan to be here, and I don't have anything here. I don't have any friends here, any family here. I don't have a house here. All I'm coming with is what's in my suitcase and my job. my remote job. No, actually, I didn't even say my job to him because I hadn't told him about the job. Just said, I'm coming here with the clothes on my back and in my case, really. And we would be building something from nothing. So this is just astonishing to me. So I said to him, is it because you don't feel the same way about me? You know, you need to be honest. If that's the reason, then fine. But if it's just because you think I have everything and you have nothing, it's not really a good reason for us to break up, to say we've got no future. Anyway, he was adamant that we didn't have a future because of that. And he wouldn't tell me that it was because he didn't feel the same about me. And he started packing up his things. So I said to him, okay. By this time I was like visibly upset. And I just said to him, okay. I just started putting on my things and getting ready to go to the gym because it was like, I just can't deal with this right now. Don't know what is going on. So he basically got his things together. I left him in the apartment. And when I came back to the apartment, he had taken everything of his. It was like he had never existed in my apartment at the time. Not one trace of him was in the apartment and he was gone. And I came back to the apartment and I just cried and cried. You know, when I left, I was tearful, I was crying, but, you know, the only thing I could do was just go to the gym. You know, I hugged him, cried, and went to the gym and left him there. And when I came back, it's just gone. You know, taken all of his stuff, his son's stuff, and just gone. No message, no nothing. So when he did that, you know, as I said, I cried, I was upset, but I did not call him. I did not call him at all. I just left it at that. So there, the mask was slipping, you know. And I guess it was another temperament checker because 2 days later, he messaged to say he wanted to come round and he brought his son round and he was saying, oh, my son, he was just crying for you. I even beat him to tell him to stop and he was just crying and crying for you. And his son hugged me and I had been in the apartment and you could see that from my face that I had been crying earlier that day. I wasn't crying when he came, but I was tearful. And so there was that, you know, he came back and he used his son to get back in with me, you know. And I asked him if things had changed. And he said no. And I said, is it because you don't feel the same about me? And he said no. And I said, so that's not the reason. It's because you think we can't have a future because I've got everything. And he just wouldn't say anything at all. And again, I was just glad to see him. And I was upset still. But he just completely got my head in a spin. He'd come back round. Why did he come back round? I didn't know why he'd come back round. You know, he said he missed me and his son missed me as well. And I hugged him and, you know, we did end up being intimate again. But he came round to the apartment after that. But it was different. It wasn't the same. He came round, but he never came to stay. He was never living there after that. And I would go round to his apartment, but at first, you know, it was a case for about a week or 2 weeks. I didn't really go round to his apartment. He didn't really come to his home, and he didn't really come round to my apartment that much. We spoke a few days in the week, but was just so upset because I'd come to see if it would work, and he just got me off kilter with this. So in the end, I had asked him, because he had said to me why he wasn't coming round to the apartment. I hadn't asked him. He just said, oh, XYZ had happened, and you know, he hadn't asked me to come round because his family had ended up coming round and he had to share some rooms with his other family members, so it was all a bit packed, and you know, he just felt it was a bit overwhelming with having to look after his son, go to work and everything, and come round. So I said to him, like, would you like me to come round to yours so that your son is still with the family and it's just easier for you? So he was like, yeah, I would love that. So then I ended up spending most of the time going round to his. I was going round to his every single day, almost. There's only a few days he came round to the apartment. I mean, I needed the space in the apartment. It was good that I had the apartment, but I had a really good apartment, 2-bedroom apartment. It wasn't cheap either, you know, rented from Airbnb, 2-bedroom apartment for the 3 of us, and I was in there by myself. You know, I go to the gym. I go to his in the evening, and then go to, you know, stay at his home, go to the gym in the morning, go back to my apartment, shower up, all of that, have language lessons for his language with a language teacher, and then wait for him to come back from work and then go back round to his and repeat the cycle. So in that respect, you know, I had been renting an expensive apartment for all of us to stay in, and he did this, and when he threw this initial bombshell on me, it was one day after I had moved to the next apartment, one day after I moved to the next apartment and had, you know, missed my flight. He could have dropped this bombshell on me the day before, and I would have gone back to the UK. So again, it was very calculated that he did this the day after, because he knew I'd missed my flight. He knew I'd spent the money for the apartment and had moved to the apartment, and it was just then that he was telling me all of this, when he knew that we'd invested more. You know, I'd invested emotionally, and we'd registered the business together as well. He was like, we can still do the business together. You know, he'd done all of that, and it was calculated. It was very clearly calculated, looking back, you know. And the thing is, I had invested emotionally by going back, and he just blindsided me and pulled the rug from under my feet with all of this. And the reasons that he gave me were so flaky that I didn't want to let go, because if he'd have just said, well, I don't feel the same, I just don't, I've tried and I don't, then what can you do? You know, you have to accept. But he was giving me fickle reasons, ridiculous reasons, that were leading me to hang on with hope. So there was all of that, you know. I was just very emotional at the time, and I really felt a lot for him, and felt that it was just so perfect before. We hadn't had any arguments, disputes. You know, I really wanted to leave the UK, and this just seemed like a good opportunity to start up something with someone, and someone that I felt that I loved. And yeah, this is what happened basically. And he made promises to take me out and about, to show me different parts of the island, and he didn't show me bits of the island at all. And I felt that he took me for granted in me going round to his, because, you know, it's like, well, I remember saying to him, well, why don't you come round to the apartment sometimes? We've got, you know, a good apartment. Your home doesn't have hot water, a roof, upstairs, and we've just got a nice apartment there that's just sitting empty. He said, well, why would I come round to yours when you come round here every day? Forgetting the reason why I was coming round, to try and help him. You know, it's just an entitlement thing. So there was all of that, and I found that I remember having one conversation with him, asking him, you know, I remember saying to him, why don't you ever tell me how you feel about me? You don't ever tell me at all. And you don't compliment me about how I am or how I look or anything like that. Not that I'm expecting that all the time, but I said to him, you know, it's just good that I'm confident in myself, just generally. But it would be nice to hear it from you as my partner. And he said to me, well, those things will come in time. He said, those things will come in time. I don't need to tell you that now. This will come in time. Just give it time. And I'm thinking, what? To tell your partner good things about them and to just, you know, be like that? You know, we're literally living together here. Why, how and why do you think that needs to wait? And in my mind, he needed a lot of validation from me. You know, he wasn't very confident. He came across as someone that was kind of misunderstood, and, you know, he seemed like the sort of person, it took a certain person, a rare person, to be able to understand him and be with him. And, you know, he made it out like he's just a family man. He likes to be with his family, spend time with his family, and not be out and about with friends, gallivanting, this, that. Just spend time with his family and his son. And the mother was overseas. The son's mother was overseas working. And he told me he went to go and get his son that was with the maternal grandmother out in the outback, where there were no other children or anyone. So he went to get his son and bring him from another island and bring him to his island. And he's been looking after his son. So he made it out, you know, that this is my life. I basically work, look after my son, stay with my family, and rinse and repeat. And little did I know that, yes, he got his son, but when I was a little bit nosy, because, you know, got to kind of just find out what's going on, I found out that the mum was sending him lots of money transfers. So I'm assuming, looking back in hindsight, that the money, that him having the son would have been beneficial for the money transfers, basically. But in my head at the time, I wasn't really thinking too hard about it. Seemed standard, really. You know, he's the main carer for his son, so of course. But yeah, that would be the reason why he's got his son, because the additional funds come in handy, you know. There was that. And being with his family, that wasn't because he wanted to be with his family because he's a family man. No, it's because narcissists can't be alone. They cannot be alone. So that is why he was with his family, for validation. Because another thing that seemed strange to me was when he split up with me in the apartment, he told me that he had been the cause of the relationship breakdown with his son's mother. And I asked him if they were still together, because I asked him what happened and he wouldn't tell me. And then he was very cagey about it. And basically, he wouldn't tell me, but said it's all his fault. And he's the reason why. I mean, you know, they tell you about narcissists, how they always blame the other person. Well, he took on the blame game this time, folks. He took it all on, but wouldn't tell me the exact reason why at all, holding his cards completely to his chest. So there was that. You know, that was another red flag. Someone doesn't really want to tell you why, the reason why. They don't have to go into 100% detail there and then, but if they don't want to tell you why they split up, why their relationship broke down, then that's another red flag, you know. So there was that. There was also another red flag, was that he tried to get me to do certain sexual intimate acts that I wasn't down with. And when I said no, he still kept trying to pressure me. And I said, no, I'm not doing that. I am not doing that. And he accepted it, but it seemed like he accepted reluctantly, like he was going to try again. You know, and he was just testing my boundaries, basically. Just completely testing my boundaries all the time regarding this. When I said, no, I don't want to do this, he kept on about it. And that's what they do. They see boundaries as challenges to break, you know. When I was leaving, I felt that, you know, he didn't come to the airport with me. He didn't. And again, red flag, like, why would you come to the airport with me? First he said, oh, he's going to go and do the turtle thing. He's going to do some tours for the turtle so he can't. And then he's going to do some excursions. And then he said his stomach was hurting and he didn't come to the airport with me. So I ended up going to the airport by myself, going back to the UK. And it was like, he wasn't going to see me for, you know, 6 weeks before I was planning to come back. He did go to the airport with me, and I felt that he was punishing me because I said I would not do certain things, basically. I just kind of felt that he was just upset about that. And that was his way of punishing and discarding me for that reason. I got back to the UK, and by the way, he went to work still, but he didn't come to the airport with me. And when I got back to the UK, within 3 days of coming back to the UK, he ghosted me for about 3 days. Basically, he ghosted me because he had been speaking to me about living in his parents' house, in his family home. He wanted me to invest in his home, to build up his home, 30,000 euro to put the roof on and finish upstairs, and then apparently we could live together upstairs in his home rather than paying money on rent to an external landlord. That would be our home. Now that all seems fine and dandy, and I had said to him, that seems like a nice idea, I'll think about it. When I got back to the UK, I said, no, I'm not doing that. You can use the profits from your proceeds in the business, and when we get the business up and running, your proceeds of profit, your share, and you can invest that into your family home. But you said that you wanted to build something from nothing with someone. So it's better that we rent, and it's better that we then save up money to buy land or buy a property, you know, rather than investing in your family home, because that's your family home. If we split up, I end up with nothing. Just like when you split up with your son's mother, you ended up with nothing. So, you know, it's not a good idea. You said you wanted to build from scratch. Let's do that. When I said that to him, he said, okay. And he seemed, I saw that rage again. I saw that bubbling rage under the surface, but no outright, you know, objections, but a bubbling rage under the surface was there nonetheless. And he ghosted me after that for 3 days, and then said that it was his phone again, because before I left, he showed me a cracked screen. The phone that he got from the money I'd lent him, the screen was broken. He said, oh, I dropped the phone. And I was like, but when I sent you the money, I sent you enough money for a screensaver, so why didn't you get one? But anyway, that was that. He said, you know, the phone, I had to get it repaired. I had to get the phone repaired, so that's why you haven't heard from me. Again, you know, my intuition didn't like this at all. But friends again said to me, oh, you know, don't overreact. It's only 3 days, you know, and he said to you and he's got back to you and blah, 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 dismissing my intuition. Incidentally, those people are not my friends now, trust me. And it isn't because I took their advice. That's not why. It's because they dismissed and invalidated my intuition. And any friend that does that is not a friend. Not a friend at all. And the next time, I forgot to tell you, that persona, that crazy persona, that demonic persona came out another time. Once when he asked me to meet him, I was at my apartment and he asked me to come to his friend's house to meet him. And when I got there, he was at the friend's house, he was with his son, and that persona was there again. And I asked him, what was wrong? What's wrong? Something seems wrong. And he said, nothing's wrong. And he kind of quickly switched up, but the energy was wrong. And that persona was there. That angry, demonic, rageful persona was there. I've never been scared of that persona, and some people might be, but for me, I knew it wasn't me. I wasn't the reason why he was like that. So that was his issue. You know, I was there to support him, but I wasn't going to be scared by that. But some people might be, because it was a very strange. As I said, the voice is shrill. There's a rage there, like, you know, he's ready to blow at any time, and he's just a rage that hates the world sort of rage, you know. But that was there, that happened there. And when I asked him what was going on, he quickly switched it up and said, oh, nothing's wrong. So, you know, there was that. But yeah, so these are some red flags I'm telling you about. One of the final red flags was he, after trying to get me to invest the 30,000, which I just wasn't doing, yeah, he then said to me that the license for the tour operator was not €3,000, it was now €30,000. And I said to him, well, I'm not spending that money on a business that isn't even up and running. I'm not investing that money. I don't have that money to spend, you know. And the thing is, in my mind, I'm not using my savings to do that. No way. And I said to him, you haven't even started running this business yet. So how do you know if you're even going to like it? We need to see if the business is viable. You need to run it. You need to do what you're doing, run the business for a few years, 2 years or so, and we'll see. After the first year, we can assess if this is profitable. If it is, then we can go to the bank and get a business loan, because we actually opened a joint account. So it was like we could get a business loan for this tour operator's license and pay it off if this business is profitable over a period of time. But I do not think it's viable to put this money into a business that hasn't even got off the ground yet. You haven't even seen one customer. I'm not going to put 30,000 euro into a startup business that hasn't even started up. Yeah. So when I said to him, like, you can run the business without the license. You can do it and see, and that way we don't tie ourselves down. He was like, I think I can do the business. But he was peed off. Trust me. He was so peed off. I could see it. He said, I think I can do it. Yes. Me and X, his best friend, we can do it together. And I said, yeah, you can. You can do it together. Tour operator license isn't going to stop you. There's a lot of people that are doing tour excursion business, and they haven't got that 30,000 euro invested immediately. So no, you can, I said to him, let's just wait and see. It doesn't make business sense to put this money into something that isn't established and hasn't made 1 cent of profit. Oh, well, he said he agreed with me, but he weren't happy. I could see. Intuition told me he's hella mad, but he didn't, he's passive aggressive. He's not that sort that will outright tell you. He'll punish you, with silence. So I started hearing less from him. And he'd at one time tell me, I knew his schedule, the days that he was going to work, his days off, the times, the shifts that he'd be doing. That stopped. That was like, now it's, yeah, I'm going, no, I'm not, yeah, I'm going, no, I'm not, so I didn't know. So I couldn't phone him because I didn't know when he was working from when he wasn't. So it was very hard to get hold of. And another time, he left the house before I left, just before I left, a few days before I left his country. I remember being in his home, and he left the home and didn't tell me that he'd left, and left his son in the home, like he left in a rush, and his mother wasn't there. His brother wasn't there, or at least if they were, they weren't anywhere about. And his son was crying, and I was in another part of the house, and I heard his son crying and came to see what was going on, and realised that he wasn't in the house at all. He'd left. And he said to me, when I phoned him, he said, he'd gone to work. And I was like, well, you didn't tell me you were going to work. He was like, yes, I did tell you I was going to work. I told you yesterday. Gaslighting, because he didn't tell me at all. And it had me thinking, did he not? But the way that he left, and he didn't tell me he was leaving at all. He just left. His young son was crying for him, and the upstairs of his house isn't finished, and his son could have fallen down the stairs and fallen to his death, literally. Or if he hadn't died, falling down the stairs, then he could have been seriously injured, and no one was about. I phoned him. I said, I'll phone my mother and get her to come around to come and get him. And it was just, again, strange behaviour. Really, really strange behaviour that he'd never done before. So where was he rushing and going to, And then the last thing he did was he said to me that he'd found a house for us to live in, and it was a few doors away from his family home, and it was €450 a month. So I said to him, that's too much. That is way too much. You can talk the landlord down on that rent to something less, to €300, no more than €300 a month. I have faith in you that you can do it. You know that landlord, so you know your neighbour. They know everyone. You know him, so speak to him and negotiate, because it's too much money for us, And I said to him, I'll also need to see the documentation. I've said this about the tour operator's license as well, that I'd like to see some documentation on that. And he didn't send me any documentation. He said he would, and he didn't, about the license cost. And then this time I said, well, I'll need to see an agreement. I need to have a rental agreement if I'm going to extend my visa to stay, because that is what the police need when I go to extend my visa for a year. They're going to need to see where I'm staying. They're going to need to see a lease agreement. I said to him, so if you can negotiate and then come back to me with the agreement, with a copy of the agreement. He said, yeah, he would. And then I didn't hear from him for a month, basically. He ghosted me. And before that, there was one more thing that he did, was that he recorded a music video, and he spent the broadband money on the music video. And I thought, this is so careless that he would do this. But at the same time, I thought, well, every now and then, if you're just used to spending all your money on your family, your son and your family, and nothing for yourself, then this one time, every now and then someone might crack, and just, there might be that careless, frivolous thing like, I want to do something for me. So he'd spent the money on the music video, because he wanted, he's doing music videos because that was his other love, to write music and, become a trap star musician. So I felt bad for him, and I sent him some money. It's like £150, to put towards the broadband and some food and some other stuff. I mean, it's nothing that I couldn't afford to lose. I've never give anything that I could afford to lose. But I felt like, he phoned me up. He was really stressed, and I'm coming in, less than 6 weeks. I don't need him to be stressed. I just need him to be focused on finding our place and, for us to stay and stuff like that. So I sent him that money, picked it up. He phoned me and said thanks and everything. And then he ghosted me for a month. I didn't hear from him. I tried calling him and he wouldn't answer the phone. Messaged him twice, didn't reply. I messaged him twice, and I phoned 2 times, and I contacted his brother, because I was thinking, I haven't heard from him. Is he okay? As a normal, caring, considerate person would do, to see if the person's okay. And the brother came back to me and said, yeah, he's fine. So I was like, okay, he's fine. And he hasn't bothered to contact me, and he's not answering the phone. What is going on? So I stopped contacting him. Didn't hear from him for an entire month. When he does contact me, he contacts me to tell me that he felt really bad for not contacting me. And the reason why he didn't contact me is because he has mental health issues. No shite, Sherlock. Yeah? Mental health issues. When he when I asked him what kind of mental health issues, he didn't want to tell me. I'm like, look, you can tell me whatever the issue is. You can tell me you haven't spoken to me for a month. No contact. Told me that he was on drugs. And basically, the reason why him and his son's mum had split up was because he spent all the money on drugs. The money for their home and food on drugs. And that is why she left him. Yeah. He also told me that the money that I sent him for the phone initially, he bought the cheapest phone and spent the rest on drugs. He said he had the money that I sent him for the food, he spent it on drugs, basically. And he's a drug addict, and he had to leave his island to go to another island. And he took his son with him, quit his job, took the son to the maternal grandparent, and then he himself was spending a few days on that island, and he was then going to another island to do turtle conservation work, and then he was going to another island after that to live for at least a year. And he had no intention of going back to his island where we were planning to live, where we registered the business, because of his addiction. And so I asked him, well, what's going on with us then? You know, is that the end of us and our business and everything? And he said, no, he wanted me to come to the second island. Well, actually, he wanted me to come to the island where he was at, if I could. But if not, if I could come to the island where he was doing the conservation work. Do you have an apartment at the island? No, I'm going to be staying in a shared house. So that there, a shared house, he will just have a room. That there was like, oh, I don't really want to do this, you know, in that respect. I do want to be with him, but it's a lot to go to be there and be living in a room. You know, this is not my idea of starting again. You know, and our business and everything, how is this all going to work? So I said to him, I'd think about it. I would think about it and get back to him. And at first, I said to him, well, do you not think that you need the time to yourself to detox and just get your head straight? Maybe I should come to the second island that you're going to stay for in a year when you'll finish this conservation work in 3 months. And he said, it's up to you if you want to do that. So then I thought about it. And he called me the next day about 20 times. So we spoke I remember it was a Sunday after he ghosted me. Then we spoke on a Monday and he called me about 20 times. And then after that, on the next day, the following day, the Tuesday, he asked me if I could send him some money for his accommodation at the Turtle Conservation Island. And I said, no, I can't send you any money. In my mind, I was thinking, you got a cheek to ask me for money when you have ghosted me for a month and you knew how you were getting there. You knew how you were getting there, so you must know how you're funding yourself. But I just said, no, sorry, can't help you. And it just started to all click to me that, you know, if he could just ask me for money, just ask me for money like that, after ghosting me for a month, within 48 hours asking me for money. Nah. And I said no. Then I noticed that he said, okay, but from his text, he messaged me a bit later that day and asked me, are you okay? And I said, yes. And he said, good, But the way that he said it to me just seemed off key. Then I couldn't reach him. My messages weren't getting delivered. You know, one tick and that's it. And asked him, are you blocking me? He's like, no, I'm not blocking you. I just don't have reception. You know, where he's staying, he should have reception. This don't make any sense to me. But my mind was saying he is blocking you and I'm blocking you. So I decided to test him because he just seemed really upset. You know, my intuition, I'm spot on. My intuition was like, yeah, he's hella mad that you're not sending him any sort of money, but I just not doing it. So then, because I'm not anybody's sugar mummy, yeah? So basically I left it. I didn't speak to him for a few days. He said to me that he was going to be calling me, because I remember after he ghosted me, I said to him, look, you know, if you want us to continue seeing each other, you need to contact me. You need to be in contact with me at least 3 times a week. You know, I know that you've got your issues going on with addiction, so you know, I don't expect you to call me every day. You've got to be doing this conservation work at night time. You've got to get your head straight. So 3 times a week, because without communication, we don't have anything. You know, I can't go on like this with not knowing where you are, like, you know, not knowing when am I going to speak to you or anything like that. It's quite triggering and I don't like it. It doesn't make me feel comfortable or secure. And he said, yeah, I'll call you every day. I remember him saying that to me. I'll call you every day. And I said to him, you don't need to make promises of calling me every day. Don't make promises that you can't keep. Just, you know, 3 times a week. Let's just see how that goes. If you can do more, then that's nice. But just 3 times a week we speak. And that's enough for now. And we'll see how it goes. And then after he asked me for the money and I said no, I didn't hear from him again. I did not hear from him again. He did not message me or anything. I remember messaging him and saying, oh, let's talk. And I didn't hear from him. And then it was a week. It was almost a week. And then I messaged him. And I actually messaged his brother, actually, to get my things, to pick up my things. Messaged a friend there and asked him if he could pick up my things from the home. And then the brother was like, said to him, I need to speak to my brother to find out if it's okay. So then the person that I asked to collect my things was like, no, I don't think I want to get involved. It's like just to collect my things from the property. So that was off. And then I got a message from him saying, if you want, you know, I've spoken to my brother and you can collect your things. You can call X to collect your things. It's fine. And I didn't hear from him. And so I remember crying, like being really upset that is all he could message me. And then I spoke to a friend. And remember, this was the weekend now. I spoke to a friend, told her about it. And I decided that I was going to give this one last shot, really. So I contacted him and I said to him that, you know, I would come. He picked up the phone, surprisingly. I was surprised. He picked up the phone. It was a Saturday and it was in August last year. And I said to him, I've decided I'm going to come to Maya. You know, I'm going to come, ask your landlord if I can have the room with you and I will pay the extra to be there in the room with you. You know, I can get a table, I can work, as long as there's internet, I can work, or I can find somewhere to work. And you know, I can stay with you and we can go halves on food and expenses. We can just go halves on that and stay, because I don't want to leave it any longer. Yeah. And when he spoke to me, when he answered the phone, he was just like this reptile lizard. Like, he was just brushing his hair, looking into the phone with these dead eyes, not saying anything to me. And I asked him, is everything okay? Because you just seem strange. And he said, nothing's wrong, you know. And he gave me this look like, and said to me, you're worrying me, you're concerning me, because you keep asking me if everything's okay. You ask me if everything's okay, and it's concerning me that you're not sure about us, that you're asking me. And it just sort of made me feel like everything's, you know, something's not right here, you know, because throughout our time together, I'd always asked him, you know, he wanted to push things, and I'd always said to him, you know, should I get an apartment myself when I come out? Would that be better? I don't want us to be rushing things intensely, and it's just too much too soon. I'm happy if you want to stay at your home and I'll stay in an apartment, and, you know, we can still be together, but we can just take it slower. And he was like, no. So then when he was like giving me this whole gaslighting like that, it's like, I felt strange. And, you know, he gave me this look. And then he said to me, when I said to him, yeah, you know, I want to come, I want to be with you, just let me know the details and I will book my flights and come. Let me know if I can, you know, the landlord says everything's okay, because he said to me it should be okay from before. And he said, yeah, I will. I've got to go to a funeral now. I think you've got to go to a funeral on this island. Okay, right, fair enough. I said, I've got to go to a funeral and I'll call you later. And I said, okay, I'll speak to you later. He said, I'll ask the landlord, I'll let you know. And I never heard from him again. I didn't hear from him. You know, I had messaged him twice to see if everything was okay and phoned. Nothing. Messages weren't getting through at all. And just one tick. So again, it's like he blocked me, you know. And he didn't message me or anything like that. Then I saw about a week later, he was online. He'd been online for 24 hours and didn't contact me. Didn't contact me at all, but yet you've been online, you know? So after that, I just blocked him. I just blocked him completely. Blocked him off phone, blocked him, no messages, no phone calls, nothing. Blocked him. The next time he spoke to me was when I turned up at his home to get my things in November. Yeah, that is when he spoke to me next, in the flesh, in November. I messaged the brother because he told me that he would be on another island, remember, you know, for at least a year. So I was like, okay, message the brother, tell him when I was at the airport, I am here. I didn't tell him I'm at the airport. I just said, I'd like to come and collect my things. I'm here in this country. I'm here on the island. And I'd like to come and collect my things today. Can you let me know a time? Didn't hear anything back from the brother. So my apartment that I had rented was not too far from his home. So when the taxi driver was taking me from the airport to my apartment, I just told the taxi driver, turn left, turn right, stop here. Taxi driver was like, you sure you know where you're going? I said, yeah, I know where I'm going. He stopped, went to the house, the door was open. I saw the sister-in-law with her newborn baby. Last time I saw her, she was pregnant. This time I said, she's had the baby. Said hello to her quietly, walked through the home, and I saw his brother standing up outside his room talking, and I heard my name being said and the phone being shown towards his room. So I just stood there in the hallway saying nothing, just waiting. His brother turned around and saw me and looked like he'd seen a ghost. Yeah, looked like he'd absolutely seen a ghost. And I just smiled, like a smirk, like, yeah, game is up, sucker, yeah. And then his brother asked me if I was all right and stuff, and then I said, yeah, I'm fine. And then I stood in front of the room and I saw him standing there, and I just stared at him. You know, I just stared right through him into the void, stared right at him and said nothing. Yeah, looked at him. You know, I know what you are. I know who you are. I didn't say it. The look on my face said it all. He smiled, that fake smile. This is a mask that he's put on for me, but you know, because he hasn't seen me for so long, he's forgotten what mask to show me. So he's put on this mask like, hello, how are you? But again, it was like another person. Like he didn't even know, like whoever was communicating with me from this husk was not someone that knew me. This entity inside of him didn't have a clue who I was. And I'm not saying that as in he was just acting distant. No, he didn't know. This thing inside of him had no idea who I was. None whatsoever. That's how it came across. Like whoever was saying hello to me was saying hello to me like I was a complete stranger that they just met. He went to shake my hand. I said, hello, how are you? And he just took his hand out to shake mine. I said, hello. Just let him take my hand. I didn't shake his hand, just let him take my hand. And then I just said, I've come to collect my stuff. And he just moved out of the way, and I picked up my things, and he asked me, how did I just arrive today? But the way he asked me, I heard a change of tone in his voice, like a pissed off sort of tone. Like, you know, because obviously he ain't getting the adoration and the smiles or anything like that this time. No smiles, no adoration. Yeah, no how are you? I don't care how you are. I didn't come here for that kind of conversation, you know, and I'm not coming here with drama either. I just want to get my stuff and leave. I've got a taxi outside. So I just got my stuff together and just looked at him and left, basically, you know, said bye to the brother and just left. And that was it. But when I looked, he'd rearranged the bedroom round, and this is how sick they are, right? Oh, look at this. Look at the duckies, right? This is how sick they are. He told me that he was on that island, yeah. The last time I had spoken to him, that he was on the new island for the turtle conservation work. But no, he wasn't on the new island. He was in his room against the white wall, pretending that he had gone to another island. He wasn't in another island. He was in his bedroom. And I remember asking him if I could see his room set up, and he didn't want to show me. Yeah? So, just busy at the moment. I'll show you another time. No, this sick, twisted mofo was in his bedroom, pretending. And when I went there and saw him there, he knew he was just a fraud. He knew he was a fraud anyway, but he now knew that I knew he was a fraud. Yeah, because he was not meant to be there. According to him, he was meant to be on that other island. Yeah, but he wasn't there. He was in his room. Absolutely ridiculous. Just took my stuff and left him in that pit of a room and just walked out. Yeah, said ciao to his brother and left, never to return to that room again. Yeah, so that's what happened. And then I had to see him again to sort out. I had to unblock him to try to get myself separated from the business. I tried to do it myself and I couldn't. They told me he had to be present, so I had to unblock him and ask him to come. And he did go to the municipal office twice and they didn't sort anything out. They were dilly-dallying and he then stopped communicating. So I made the decision, after extending my stay on his island for an additional week, that I was going to be leaving no matter what the following week. And that is what I did. That is what I did. So that is the story. It's taken me an hour and 10 minutes to just offload it to you. But I wanted to let you know, this is how sick and twisted they are. You know, absolutely sick, absolutely twisted. And just pay attention, you know. The signs were always there. You know, the hot and the cold, the push and the pull, going cold, you know, and then you will be thinking, what is going on? They don't give you any real reasons. This narc wasn't abusive in that way, like, you know, criticizing, verbally abusive. He wasn't that to me. He wasn't physically aggressive or anything like that, but he did try to push boundaries, and he did temperament checkers of mini ghosting and discards, and, you know, breaking up with me and giving fickle reasons and for the breakup, you know, just all temperament checkers, and, you know, ghosting me after asking me if I could help him with money, and, you know, just how they are. You know, he tried to exploit me. He tried to financially exploit me, and I said no. And he tried to sexually exploit me by trying to get me to do things that I did not want to do, and I said no. And the punishment for that was silent treatment and ghosting, basically. Silent treatment and ghosting. And I saw several types of personas come out in him. You know, that persona, when I called him to say I wanted to come out to the island that he was at, was another persona. One that was just like a cold lizard person, you know. And I told you I saw that angry demonic persona as well. And then a persona that didn't know who the hell I was when I went there to collect my stuff, you know. So yeah, this is it. That was it. Good riddance, really. I went through an awakening period and it was very, very difficult. But I'm out on the other side. I look at my picture of the first video, you know, my picture on the first video, YouTube video of this channel. And that was when I went to go and get my stuff. I filmed that around the 2 weeks mark that I was there, and I'd been fasting for 2 weeks because that was sort of my thing. I'm going to fast for 2 weeks as a covenant and a commitment to getting this process sorted, separated the company account, separating myself from the registered business. And I'm not going to eat until it's done or until I get to the next island. And it didn't get done. So, you know, when you saw that picture for that video, yeah, I've been fasting and I got there and I just wasn't happy about being there. But I thought I'd start sharing my journey, and I wanted to continue, but it wasn't really viable for me to do so because the different islands that I went to didn't have good internet, and I also just was just going through it. You know, when I went to the next island, that was the island that we were meant to stay on for a year, and I was there in that island in the big city where we were meant to be staying by myself. You know, and it was just a tumultuous period. I went through the emotional storm being there. Really went through it. And went to visit different islands that were there, which I couldn't have done if I was with him. But yeah, this is how, you know, the illusion shattered, basically. The illusion shattered. And they give you no closure. They don't. You have to find closure yourself, because if you're waiting on closure from them, you're either going to get silence or you're going to get BS. It's one or the other, you know. And when they do show up, it's all fake and empty apologies. I remember when he did call me You know, when he called me to speak to me about, you know, after the ghosting for a month, you'd think that I'd be really happy to speak to him. But I was relieved at the time of speaking to him. But after I came off the phone to him, I cried. I just cried and cried. And I'd already gone through a period of grieving him. And that's the thing with these knocks. You grieve them. When you go through your awakening and everything, the way that they discard you, the way that they deal with you, and the silent treatments and the things that they do, when you decide to step away, it's like ripping off a limb. Yeah, it's very painful. And you grieve them like you grieve a dead person, except they're alive. Yeah, they're alive and you're grieving them like as if they were dead. It would be easier if they were dead, because then they'd be dead and gone, but you know that they're alive, you know. So yeah, sorry it's taken an hour and 16 minutes to get my story out, but this is it. Like, share, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you soon. Surviving to thriving, never forget that.